Between Two Amps is proudly sponsored by Liquid Death. Right now I am enjoying a mango chainsaw.
I got some severed lime. If you don't know, they have some new flavors that have come out recently,
and they're amazing.
They're really good.
Yeah, there's a little bit of agave infused in there.
Yeah.
And so it really makes those flavors pop. I'm actually really stoked on it.
Yeah, it's really good. Murder Your Thirst, by the way, that's what I do daily.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could possibly get through a podcast without murdering my thirst.
I agree.
I mean, really, I don't think I could riff.
Yeah.
Without murdering my thirst.
I mean,
is there anything that you can think of that you could possibly do without murdering your thirst?
No.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. I can murder my thirst. Perfect.
Perfect.
But I definitely murder a lot of songs.
It was a perfect thirst murder.
Perfect thirst murder. Thank you. Thanks, Liquid Death. Appreciate it.
Thank you to Liquid Death.
And watch our podcast.
Yeah.
I said watch our podcast.
Yeah. Listen to our podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks, and murder your thirst.
Yep.
He was looking for a life that would give him the feeling of being worthwhile.
Welcome to another episode of Between Two Amps. We have a very special guest this week, one that I have personally known since the late 90s. You might know him from such bands as ZAO, Pack. Give a warm Between Two Amps welcome to Scott Mellinger, a.k.a.
Hello.
Bro.
Melon Bro, that's it. Oh, I love it. Man, it's been too long. I can't stand it. I can't stand time, how it just kills you.
What tour did you guys meet on? It was Darkest Hour and ZAO play together?
I think we did a couple. There was actually, I think the last show of the last tour that I was in Darkest Hour and we toured with ZAO on was, I think we've talked about on the show before, was the one at St. Andrew's Church in Maryland that ended in a riot.
Yes. I remember that. Holy crap. Wow.
Do shows anymore end in riots? I don't think so. There's no more rioting at shows, which is unfortunate.
Because I can't. There's so many shows I remember back in that early time period. Like, so the band I did before I did ZAO was called Chapter. Then it was called Creation is Crucifixion.
Oh, I was just gonna say we played with you. Yeah, we played with you guys. Creation is Crucifixion.
Okay. Yeah. So we played this crazy Cleveland fest, and it was the fest that what was the band called? There was a riot. What the heck was One Life Crew?
Oh.
So there was that. And do you remember the Hellfest where like Bad Luck 13 like shot shit into the crowd?
Oh, I mean, they were called Bad Luck 13 Riot Extravaganza.
Exactly. What do you think?
No, this was I think because my computer just cut out, but Scott, you were talking about the Cleveland Fest in '96, right? Where there was One Life Crew got up and there's just a fucking riot. I remember that. Yep. I was right there and I was like, holy shit, this is going down right now.
Well, dude, part of what's making like this year's going to be so cool. So we played that Cleveland Fest because Abnegation played it. So like we became friends with those dudes. I don't know if your guys are familiar with them or not, but they actually just kind of like came back, and we're doing a reunion show with them in Pittsburg this year. So I'm super excited because that was like, speaking of how you start in music, like Abnegation was kind of like my pathway into this world. Like I listened to all kinds of metal prior, but like to get into the DIY, like punk hardcore kind of thing, that band was one of the ones that got me into the direction that we are now. So
Did you ever play with them?
no,
Fill in
I
for
never
them at
played.
all?
I never filled in for Abnegation, but Paul from Abnegation was part of Creation.
That's right. He was in Creation. And was Carl Lavinka in that band for a little bit too?
Carl actually took my place in Creation. So when I left,
Okay.
Carl came in. I know. Wow, isn't it? It's a crazy world with all the
dude. So
people.
Fred, if you don't know Carl, this dude is a character, right? He's a sick musician in probably every instrument, right?
Oh my God,
he was in a band with Andy Hurley from Fall Out Boy called Kill the Slave Master.
Yep.
Yeah. He was also in Race Trader at one point, and the dude could play everything, right?
Oh, he's crazy.
Consistently the best names out of that circle.
Yeah. And then he, I believe now, is like a fly fisherman who plays like hockey. That's all he does. I don't know, but there's always like myths about him.
That sounds totally right. And how it should be.
Oh man!
Wow.
Well, there's a lot of band to band in there.
Oh yeah.
going back. So I mean, you kind of alluded to Abnegation kind of being one of your gateway bands. What was your start in terms of like getting exposed to music and then getting into punk, and like how did picking up an instrument, coincide with all of that? Like what was that journey like?
So I remember being pretty like maybe 8 or 9, and my grandfather played guitar. So we would have like the family reunions, like everybody. And he would bring his guitar out, and I'd always be like totally mesmerized at like what he was doing with it, because it's just so weird. Like this thing makes sound and whatever. So when I was about 8 or 9, he bought me like a student acoustic, and he showed me like G, C. I couldn't play C obviously because that's the hardest one for when you're young. But all like G, D, all that stuff. And then he always had like Johnny Cash or like Waylon Jennings playing, like some of that older like outlaw country or whatever. Which then like kind of grew my love for that stuff, like the nostalgic love that I had from listening to it back then. And I got pretty serious with guitar. I did want to play, I think as all guitarists, I did want to play drums at one time, and then I just wasn't allowed to, because that's how it always happened. So, but I took a really big interest in it, obviously. And when my parents saw that I was like trying seriously to like play, they did end up buying me a little bit better of a guitar, like a little lower level, like Ibanez is like an RG 560, I think. And I did take lessons, and that was when I found Master of Puppets and Peace Cells and like South of Heaven, all that stuff. And
so I don't know, the RG 560 is pretty sweet.
That's a good guitar.
I remember because I still have the receipt. So like I think when my dad got it, it was like $425. And I remember like thinking like, you could like, is this like a car payment? Like, is this how much a car is? Like, how would you buy me a guitar? So, but it was, so it was like a white, so it's like all off-white colored now. Like, I love it. How bad it. Oh, I still have it. Oh,
that's killer.
So, it needs a little TLC, but it actually still plays comfortable, and the neck is thin as anything. So, but so I got into like your normal, like all of us, like the Metallicas, the Megadeths, all the stuff that you can like find without having to be like totally knowledgeable. And that's where like my love of guitar came, and playing it and wanting, hearing that palm muted chug that everybody falls in love with. So got super into that, took lessons, got better and better, and then started in bands in high school. Did bands where you just covered. I mean, I think back at like all the covers that I did when I was in high school with like friends, and we were doing like Danzig covers, Misfits covers. We were playing like Metallica stuff. And like so much good crap that I still listen to today.
So what was your gate? Was all of like the Misfits and Danzig was the gateway Metallica for that, or what? Like,
so I went backwards. So I found Metallica probably first of all. Like Metallica was the first thing I found. And then I went to Danzig from Metallica, found about Danzig, because Danzig was more my speed. Like my love for the Misfits now is definitely like there, but like I wasn't like a big like fast punk guy. I was more of like a like kind of mid-tempo metal guy.
Yeah.
So I went from Metallica to Danzig, and then branched out to like Sam Hain Misfit stuff. And I think what happens too is like when I finally did start to move into the like underground hardcore scene, and obviously too, like a lot of the local bands were playing that kind of stuff, so we lucked out because we had awesome local bands in our area. And like Abnegation was considered a local band back then because they were Erie, so we were like 2.5 hours or so. And then there was a band from Greensburg called Passover that was doing like this awesome, just like almost like beat down kind of like, but like metal stuff. We like all go ahead.
Oh, did you guys ever play with this band from North Carolina called Day of Suffering?
Yes.
I remember Day of Suffering.
Absolutely. You were in the band?
I remember them. Yeah. Well,
that record is still incredible.
Oh, dude, some of those bands are crazy. Like, and it's so funny to me too, because so many people we work with now, like, you guys are obviously familiar with Holy Mountain, the guys that do like our T-shirts, and I mean they do like Full of Hell, they do it. Yeah. But Danny, the guy that runs Holy Mountain, remember that band? How am I missing? They were from North Carolina too, but he knew Day of Suffering. When we were doing a chapter tour, what was the band name from North Carolina that he like went around with?
Were they called like Falling Down before they were Day of Suffering, or?
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know how I remember that, but I did.
Okay, the band that Danny was involved with will pop into my head soon. But they were from Carolina, and like, so even like I met Danny back when I was in like those bands. So like, it's awesome how a lot of the people that we deal with are kind of like people we knew forever.
Yeah.
But so yeah, back to the Metallica thing. Started kind of covering all that stuff to learn it better, to learn how to play guitar better, and then found those local bands, which then opened our eyes to like all that stuff going on everywhere, right? So like didn't really know who Earth Crisis was, but from these local bands that were doing that style of music, you find out that there's this Earth Crisis band that's been doing this. Oh, holy shit, I didn't know. Or like, and there was a lot of bands that we like, I guess it was like early like right out of high school when we started, but like Dead Guy, all that stuff was kind of happening at that time. So like Dead Guy, Rorschach, this band Groundwork from Arizona.
Amazing. They're like still my favorite bands.
All that's like fell in love with all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And that right there, like kind of like one, you kind of figure out in a weird way that holy shit, I can do this. Like we can actually, because you fall in love with Metallica. You can't watch a Metallica show and be like, oh, I'm gonna do that.
Let's go buy a stage now.
Let's do this. We need flames and everything. So yeah, like you can't do that. So you find all these bands that like are playing the kind of music that is, but they were doing it in a way that was totally viable. Like you could see like, well, if you put your head down, eat some ramen noodles and sleep in a fucking van, we can do this. And that's kind of where that all started. And we toured, like I remember graduating high school, and this was with Chapter, graduating high school, saved up the money I got from graduation, and that was used to like eat and do stuff on tour with Chapter. So,
wow.
And that's the beginnings.
Man, so where did you start finding out about local shows? Was it just like at school, like people were talking about, there's a cool band playing at a VFW hall.
Yeah.
Well, we once again, like
Were you guys from Pittsburgh? Did you say you guys from Pittsburgh?
Well, I live about 25, 30 minutes outside. Like, so
Okay.
I live in a town called Latrobe, which is, suburby, I guess you would consider.
Yeah,
and then, like, all the rest of the guys are like a little closer to Pittsburgh, but none of us, actually Russ lives in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
But we're all like, we call Pittsburgh because we're these little shit towns.
Yeah.
But what was I saying? Where are we at? How to find shows?
Yeah,
That's right. Okay, so there was 2 clubs in our immediate suburb area, like not like Pittsburgh, because a lot of the shows that you would go see in Pittsburgh were legitimate metal shows. That like if you're gonna get on those, like you either have to sell tickets or like that's hard work, man. Like that's tough. And if nobody gives a shit, like nobody cares. Also, you're not selling those. It's super gross. So there was that, but there were these 2 places that were in our town. There was one place called Illusions that had a ton of different names prior to that, and then there was a place called Dairy Theater.
Okay.
And the people that owned those venues, which the venues were for what you'd think back then. I mean, they were nice venues. They actually had legitimate sound systems, all that kind of stuff. And what ended up happening is they would just let anybody play. You would kind of get a rapport with them, get a relationship. They would let you book the shows, and we would have like 30 to 150 people all the time. And it just seemed like, because we live in kind of a depressed area that's, I mean, it's not bad, but it's like a boring, there's nothing to do. And those places existed at the right time because it gave all these kids somewhat, like, there was always shows to go to, even if they were local bands, and people would go to them. Like you'd have good crowds for these local shows. And then there was a scene that built up around here really strong.
And like around that time, I think I'm from Chicago originally, and a lot of the shows that like my early bands would play would be in like small towns like that. Because kids would come out and like it'd be like in Toledo and like like Erie, and you're like, God, these towns are just completely, they're like old steel towns that were totally like defunct now, But we'd play shows there, and kids would just show up, and it was awesome. The shows were fucking great.
Yeah, and so we had a really, like, the people that own those places, I give like unbelievable credit to, because and it shows, because there are a ton of people from our area that are still doing this music thing. Like all the guys in ZAO, like even all the separate bands that we were in prior to ZAO and all that stuff. We all grew up here, and it kind of like gave you that feeling that you could do it. That Juliana Theory band, all like. Those dudes were from around here, like all that. And there's like, I mean, they're way younger, but like there's just a great scene here. But like Code Orange now, they're killing it, and they're. Oh,
I didn't know they're from PA, Pittsburgh area.
They're from Pittsburgh. So there's there's a cool vibe, I think. And Pittsburgh does have it's pretty multicultural. It's really artistic. There's like a lot of films have been made there now because of. Like how Georgia does it, they'll give you tax breaks, whatever.
Tax breaks,
But like Fincher has a studio in Pittsburgh, so there's some really cool shit that goes on down there. But back when we were like younger, there was none of that. But we had shows, and the clubs were great, and the people that ran them were great, and they didn't make you pay to play, and you would literally get a portion of the door, just like how like a decent door deal would be today. That's what we were getting. I mean, I remember playing shows when we were in high school, and you'd make $100. Like, that's
you're like,
crazy.
Fuck,
right? Yeah. Like, I'm not gonna make $100 for doing this. So
I remember losing $100 a lot.
Oh yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah. Our little hometown shows, then we start to go out and tour, and you get fucking ruined. But it built up a confidence, and it built up a sense that like you could do this. And I give credit to the promoters and the people that own those clubs around here, because I think that really pushed all of us to see that this is possible.
It's really cool, because like I don't think I really recognized how, like, because I feel like Richmond, Virginia had a very similar scene where there were like house venues that a lot of touring bands would come through, and we kind of took that out to like where I went to college, like in Harrisonburg, Virginia, always doing house shows out there. And then, they through the radio station started Mac Rock, which I think ZAO also.
Oh yeah,
played.
we did. Yeah.
You definitely played it at JMU a couple times. But like that seemed normal. Like even in Richmond, like Twisters was like a big club there. It was a small club that hosted all of the punk shows.
Good.
And that was how it worked. And then like moving to Los Angeles and being like, yeah, I want to start a band, like everything is pay to play. I'm just like,
it's like so shitty. It's like so corny too. It's like you're like, ugh,
terrible. I'm like
you would think by now like people would get it that's like
nope.
Holy
they still got that
shit.
attitude. It's like, yeah, man, we're playing the fucking Viper Room tonight. I'm like, I never want to play that place, like ever.
God.
Yeah. I was like, yuck. Dude, that like seems still like the people still are in that like kind of world where it's like, yeah, man, I'm going to Musicians Institute. I'm gonna fucking come out and be a fucking ripper. I was like, all right, but
cool.
Yeah.
Right. It's like like after talking to through the show and everything and hearing everybody's experiences, like I don't think it's by chance that like areas like Pittsburgh or like Richmond that would, I guess, can be technically considered like secondary markets, like have so many bands that have, stood around for multiple decades and are still going strong. Like
because you don't have scenes in that. I mean, you don't have bands coming right away all the time. So you start your own scene. You start your own bands.
Right.
That's a totally good point too.
Yeah. So it's like I can totally see that. And for a while, Chicago is a major market. Would have that, but Chicago has a big town, small town mentality, if that makes sense, because it's so big. We got the suburbs, and in the suburbs, you just had like bands popping up here and there, and we wouldn't rely on the big bands coming into the city to be our like thing. It was just really different. But I totally understand like Pittsburgh and Richmond mentality.
Yeah. So when you were starting to book these shows, like what were you still playing covers, or was it like were you starting to do originals?
It was probably a lot of like 50-50, I would say, because like that was another thing that's strange to think about, because like it really did blossom here with bands being their own thing and having original stuff. So like the cover band thing really wasn't a thing for us back then so much. Like a lot of the things we would play would be our own songs, but then you would throw in like just something that people might know so they can get a vibe of like what you kind of are trying to do.
Yeah.
But we would have battle of the bands and stuff like that. And I mean, it would get a little, contentious or whatever, but most of the people around in our area, I mean, I'm still super close friends with most of those people. So it was really like an artist, like if people wanted to see everybody kind of succeed and do cool things. And when bands would do cool things, everybody would like rally around and like, support the guy that was able to do stuff. Like there was a couple bands that when I was still in high school, this band called Catch Penny, actually Jeff played with them, our drummer, but he like they like got a deal. Like they actually got probably no money at all, but they got something to record. Right. And we were all like, holy shit, like these guys are doing it, And, I remember seeing that. And like, I remember when all these different people, like, and I know like, even when we did Creation, like we got to the point where like, well, we aren't going to really get a deal because we're just this disgusting, weird metal shit. So like, we're going to like, just do our own stuff. We're going to record. And then like, you have like $200 and you find a buddy that can record you. And our records have charm, but
charm is a magic word. Exactly.
Yeah, but it's great. Like, and dude, I have such a love when I listen to that stuff that we did back then. Like, man, I just love it. And I actually talked to Nathan and Paul Well, I talked to Paul because of this abnegation thing, but like I talked to Nathan and Mike, the drummer, and talked to those guys still. And I mean, Creation did a lot of cool stuff after I left, so it's like it's just really cool to see how everybody, what they turned into and what they do.
Yeah.
So what was the first band, and like what was your setup? Was it the RG into?
Okay.
What did you have, a Blue Voodoo?
Oh no, it's so much worse. Okay, so I had the RG, which I'm like, and you kind of think this way, like, hey, everybody's looking at my guitar. They're really not looking at what's going on back there because they don't really know what that
No,
is.
it's good.
They see this. I had a GX 1600 XL crate, solid state amp.
I had one of those. That was my first amp. My first head. Yeah.
Yep, I had that, and if I might be wrong, but when they did the accompanying cabinet to that head, I don't remember what Celestians they put in that cab, but I swore it was vintage 30s for a long time because I remember like way after that when I was like, oh, it's carpet and it's stupid.
Yeah.
I think those speakers were fucking great, and I never even realized it.
I mean, I wouldn't doubt it.
I can't remember because like it. I mean, but they could be pieces of shit too because I remember it had Celestion equipped on it, and I swore I remember talking to somebody. And they're like, dude, you had one of those. Yeah,
they had that little badge on there.
Credits. Yeah. And they're like, no, the speakers were great. I'm like, dude, no. And they're like, no, seriously, it's just the head that sucked off the speakers. And I'm like, but I look back now and I'm like, it was probably like a financial decision to buy this crate for me. But the price my parents paid for that thing, I could have had a JCM 800.
Oh,
I
really?
know it. Dude, because it was like $1,200 for the whole thing.
Oh, for the whole thing.
Dude, it was something crazy because they bought it like from an actual dealer or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they probably got ripped off because they're whatever. But I remember like when my mom told me how much they paid for that, I was like, I'm pretty sure because in early like 95, what was the JCM 800 going for? Nobody wanted those anyway.
Oh yeah, no, they
you could have gone
all
for like
$5 or
$400.
less. Yeah.
Dude, exactly. I could have had a used 800 and a Marshall cab for the same damn price I could be having the thing that I use now forever. I could have had it all.
I don't know. Those crates, it's coming. It's the boom. They're gonna.
You think? Dude, okay. So you just talked about the Blue Voodoo, right?
Yeah.
Who is the guy that designed the Blue Voodoo amp?
Ooh, I don't know.
I don't know if the Blue Voodoo had a designer behind it because I don't know if it was similar to like the 5150 or like the Lee Jackson. I don't know if it was him. I don't think.
I could be totally wrong, but I thought I heard that the Blue Voodoo crates, there are versions of those amps that are really good.
Interesting. Because I
don't know.
I didn't realize that they.
And dude, I coveted. Yeah, so
because the one I remember
Jackson Ampeg was what I always wanted to.
Oh,
go ahead.
I've for those since then. I actually kind of want to just like have one to try it out. And then like just because we talk about it so much on the show, I was looking up the Blue Voodoo because the one I have in my head was like from like the Guitar World guitar player like ads. And it was an actual blue Tolex head, and you could see like the tubes glowing through it.
Yeah, it was. Yep.
But when I looked on like Reverb, there's like generations after that are up there that aren't blue Tolex, or like I only saw like one that I kind of recognized, and it was more. I was hoping like $300 maybe.
How much are they going for?
They're like the one I was thinking of was closer to 1,000.
What?
Really?
Oh, dude!
It's also because of Reverb. It's also because of like
it was
the
internet changing for the head and the cab, and it's clearly because we talk about it a lot since we're the tastemakers.
That's right.
And the shitty gear market.
Now I'm so intrigued about the Blue Voodoo, if it's actually any good, or was it something where like if you did change some electronics in the amp, it like opened it up in a way that like, you know, because like you can cut, like say you cut a gain stage that's ridiculous, and that's what made the tinny horrible shit sound. So you cut the gain stage out, and now it's this fucking great amp.
Because I was just looking up online right now. I'm like, oh, who did the Straight Voodoo? And it says like all these forums came up, and it said Straight Blue Voodoo mods 2022, 2021. I was like, people are actually modding these?
I'm telling you, there's probably some sick, amazing shit.
There's like, cause there's another head that got popular for mods. It was the Jet City heads that Dave Friedman from Amplification was doing mods on them. And like that, looking back now, like, cause I heard about the amps like early on and was like kind of, I was like, oh, like when he had the Marsha amps, it was just like, you know, low number, production numbers on the heads. And I was like, oh, because like the Perfect Circle dude was playing one. I was like, oh, I want to try that. But it was still like, 2000 something.
I know, there's so,
but like those crazy heads now are just like,
yeah, you can't even, dude. I can't even find. I'm looking for like a backup 50-watt 800, and there's like you can't even touch them.
No, they're like $2,000, right?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, you can't even. It's like if you see one for $1,800, it's fucking beat up.
Oh, yeah,
and it probably needs repaired somehow.
It's got like leopard print.
Yeah,
like fuzzy Tolex on it. And like a couple failed like master volume mods on.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I wonder what prices would have been if it's just like, oh yeah, they're getting older and older, or if it's the internet that's just driving the prices up on these things, for unnecessarily, It's
but
like
also like I'm always curious because I go on eBay and I'll look at completed listings to see what they actually sold for, because it seems like people will just throw out any crazy number, and then you see the actual sold, like either they never sell or what they sold for it's like, or best offer was accepted.
Oh yeah.
And then you see the line, but you don't see what actually got paid for.
It's like $2,000 for this head, but I'll take $900.
Yes. That's like, I remember, oh man, I forget what tour it was, but when we were always gear hunting, I mean, we never had enough, like I never had enough money at one time to be like, I'm going to go gear hunting, but like we would have, we'd go and look. But I remember being in Cincinnati with Every Time I Die, and Andy found an 800, and it was the vertical inputs. I think it was a 50-watt, and it was like $800. And dude, I remember being like,
what year was Texas? That? Do you know?
It was probably 2003 or 4.
That makes sense.
And then and then we were in Texas. I think about this all the time, but we were in Texas, and there was a Silverburst. It was like a 79 Silverburst.
Oh no, and that's like my favorite guitar. Like
$1,800. $1,800.
Oh my
$1,800. I could have taken the 3 guitars I had with me, traded it in, got that thing, and it kills me.
That's like $5,000 now. And if it's a 79, probably more than that.
Super easy. Like all day long now. Like, oh God, Adam Jones, you son of a bitch.
Damn it.
I'm like, that's like the guitar, like I'm still looking for a silver, and I'm never gonna afford one, but I was just like, son of a bitch, man.
Did like when they did the Jones reissue one or whatever, which is funny because they just have an open coil goddamn pickup. Like, what did they really do?
There's a mirror on headstock.
There's a what?
There's a mirror. There's a mirror on the headstock.
That's it.
The extra.
But
$5,000, I mean, whatever it is.
I saw that stuff jump up right when that came out, and I was like, "Wow, that's so confused. Like, why? Like, I mean, I can still, because you can find good customs for like $2,500.
Yeah.
But you're not finding a Silverburst. And dude, oh God, did you see the Jerry Cantrell wine red one?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, they did a Jerry Cantrell it kind of has the same vibe as the Adam Jones one. I don't know what year his actual custom's from. Oh God, it's fucking gorgeous, but it's like $4,900. But you can find like wine red customs, and they're not jumping up in a crazy price. But the one that they did for him is, man, it's like, oh God, it looks perfect. It's so gorgeous.
Well, it's like I played with a guitar player in one of my bands in Boston, John. He had a Sunburst custom with the triple humbuckers in it. And it was like sick, you know. And I think he got it for like $700 or something like that, you know.
Oh my God, I forget what year I bought mine because I always wanted a custom, and I'm not a big gold hardware guy. Like for some reason, like gold hardware always just kind of turns me off, even though sometimes it looks cool. But I've always looked for a Les Paul custom that didn't have gold because it always came that way. So somebody had to change it out or whatever.
Yeah.
And I found a really nice, it's not a tobacco burst, but it's like a honey burst, tobacco burst kind of. And it had all nickel hardware. And the only thing that kind of blows about it, it's an 85.
Okay.
I got it for like right around $2,000, but it has the low profile frets. And those things, man, when you're tuned, I got to get it. I have to have it refretted, but I'm so afraid.
So it was one of those like quote unquote fretless wonders.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to throw up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know what was going on here.
I think the last custom I had, it was a 78. I got it for $1,500. It was mint when I got it, and it was all original. It was like
a custom.
It was a custom. It was a tobacco burst, but it was like it was an unusual tobacco burst because how sometimes it's like the 3-tone and it goes from like a yellow to brown.
Mm-hmm.
This one was just like brown to darker brown. I'm so bummed I sold that. I traded it for like a PRS like SE 245, like thinking like maybe I just want to try something different. And now I'm just like,
you want to sound like Creed is what you wanted to do.
No.
I'm like, I don't like PRS. Like, I mean, they're pretty, I guess. Like, especially if you're in 311, they're great, but I'm not in 311. So
I'm kind of curious to try the John Mayer one. That like Strat ripoff PRS that they do.
Oh,
Have you seen that?
The silver.
Yeah. I wonder if that plays, because everyone I've ever played, I've never been like,
They all play great. It was just
a lot of people actually say that they're really good guitars. I've seen people play them. Yeah,
it was cool. Like it's like the 25-inch scale neck is
which
cool.
I love. Yeah.
It was just kind of.
It became the guitar of the new metal scene for a while. Like that was like all those dudes were like, the fucking Marble Mouth bands were all like singing. I mean, playing those PRSs.
Yep.
Marble Mouth.
That's the perfect way to explain it.
You're singing like they have marbles in their mouth.
I wanted to go back to the like getting started on all of the starting to play shows. You've got your crate, you've got your Ibanez. What was the progression from there? When did you start venturing out from Pittsburgh and getting in the van and trying to play elsewhere?
Like Fred and I always kind of asked this of some of the people who are just like, was there a band that came through town or that you saw on the road? We were like, holy shit, I don't know what these dudes are playing, but I want that. And then like for us in Chicago, there was an amp that everybody went and got after this band played, and then, 3 years later, it was the amp that everyone went and got, it's like, whatever,
So the amp that I went and got was a weirder thing, but the band that made me go, I'm going to go do this. I went to when Quicksand released Manic Compression. They were on tour with Orange 9mm and Sick of It All. And I went to that show in Pittsburgh.
That was a good tour.
That was when I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
I want to do this. But I'm trying to think what band made me get the 5150. I can't remember what band because that was like
because no band was playing that amp. You're right. No, I don't remember any band playing a 5150 at that time.
Who was playing?
Well, I mean, it turns out everyone. I just didn't
Everybody.
know. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking to like Mike Hickey last week, like with Carcass. Like, I didn't know that like Heartwork was all 5150. Like,
I didn't know that until just now.
Right.
Holy shit.
Watch the last episode.
Yeah, I was like,
I didn't watch that one.
Oh,
dude, I gotta
my
watch
favorite
that.
high
Oh my god.
Like, yeah, and then like In Flames, At the Gates, like all of those metal bands, like that I had no idea. It was just like it just through advertisement. I thought it was that's the Eddie Van Halen amp.
Yeah.
Like I love him, but like I kind of want to do my own thing, you know?
Yeah.
Looking behind the curtains, it's like, oh wait, what's everybody has this amp.
I'm trying to think who I saw first that had that, and I was like, because I remember trying so hard to get that kind of chunky gain, and you couldn't. And dude, I would try so hard. I mean, now overdrives have come such a long way, or I just wasn't smart enough. But like, I can't remember the band I saw that had a 5150, and I remember I remember getting one because they were reasonably priced. You could get one for like $300 or $400, and it sounded. And it was the block letter.
Yeah, that's the original one. The
block. Which one's the one? Is it the signature one or the EVH? Which one's the first? The signature one's the second one, right?
I don't know actually, because I have one that's got the signature on it, and I think mine's got the signature on it. Yeah, and then there's just the little EVH.
Just the EVH,
yeah.
Which I had like a couple of those amps, and I know I had one of whatever, like one. Actually, dude, the amp that I used, I sold to Ken Susi, and he still has it. And every time we do ZAO records, he always asks if I want to borrow it back, and I always want to, and I never do because I'm afraid I don't want to ship it because I'm like I don't know how. I'll just have to do a record with Susi, so then I can just use it from in his place. But
those amps are like when I used to like I have one, and I've had one for a long time. For 10 years, it was in my parents' basement after I stopped like touring a lot. And it was just like wasn't working. I took it into like this repair guy in Chicago. He was like, "You really want this thing repaired, really?" And I'm like, "Dude, just do it." And he did. And it's like, and it's my favorite amp. I love that. It's a great high gain amplifier. And I have an old rectifier too, hand wired one, and it just doesn't have that break and that like kind of the highs and the mids that the 1550 does.
My biggest issue, I have a Tremaverb. And I bought the Tremaverb because I heard so many good things about how it's like it cuts better than, because like a lot of dual rectifiers to me, like they're really hard, and the way their mid knobs work, like you have to turn them up more than you think you need to, and it freaks me out. I never like it. That's like that's too far, but then that's how you have to do it. But the Tremaverb sounds fucking awesome. It doesn't sound as good as the 5150 though. And I bought it. I'm like, I love it. And then but my 800 is what I use all the time. And I'm like, I can't get the 800 is just clearer, and like I can hear everything. Yeah. But I just got to learn better.
It's so funny. Like,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, like, even after I heard, like, because Schleibaum had a 5150 for a while. Like late 90s. Like I remember because we were always like going into like whatever town we were in, going to the music shop, see what they had used. And we had seen, we played with Entombed on like the Speak the Truth tour. And all they had were, Plexis 800s, and like it was all vintage amps, and we're like, that's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
He had a 5150 at the time, and it sounded great. And he was like, but then we rolled into like the spot, and they had it was like a I don't know what it was like an 80s reissue Marshall Plexi head. I've never seen one since. And it was a cool head, but it was 100 watts and didn't have a master volume. So, like, we kind of tried it in the store. It was like, yeah, this is cool. So he traded the 5150 in the middle of tour, where the next show is just like all you can hear is Mike.
Wow. Wow.
What I thought, in hindsight, I think we probably sounded great. And then we get 10 and it's just like, there's no gain. It's super loud. What do you do? But like, I always loved, like, I could hear the 5150 and I'm like, but there was just this cognitive dissonance where I'm just like, it doesn't cost enough and it doesn't look super cool. Like, the mezzas look really cool, but the 5150s actually sound really good. Like, I mean, the dual rectifiers sound good, but not like the 5150. And it's just but the dual rectifier is so expensive. Like, it has trucker plate on it.
And it has 15 different freaking knobs that you can do all kinds of crazy shit. And every one of them I mess up every time I touch one, it messes up my sound. I have to credit Andy Williams for Every Time I Die too, because I remember when we toured with them, and the 5150. The thing about it that's weird to me is I remember talking to the tech that like lived in our area that I'd go take all my amps to him, because he was like, this dude could build his own amps, and I don't know why he never did anything, because he'd be great at it. But he's like, all the 5150 is a souped up basement. He's like, it's a souped up basement. They took the bass, just like what Marshall did. Marshall took the basement and they put whatever the gain channel in it.
Yeah.
5150s have a super high, like there's like 2 or 3 different gain
stages or whatever.
Gain stages.
Yeah.
But the thing that's weird about the 5150, and I remember him telling me this, he's like, the thing that would really put those over the edge, where people would shit themselves and they'd buy them all the time, and for some reason they never did this. There's a bias mod to them. So you know how you buy a 5150 and you could just change the tubes, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
They cold bias them, right? So like, you'll never be too hot. Like, it won't ever burn up because they cold bias them from the manufacturer, just like what Mesa does, kind of.
Yeah.
He said there's a way you buy. I'm sure I'm like old hat. People probably already know this, but there's a bias mod you can do a bias mod on the 5150, so you can then bias the amp, because you don't need to, but you can do a mod that you need to, and then you can burn those fucking power tubes. And it'll crush. He's like, but I never wanted to do it because I was like, I don't want to mess up what this is. But he's like,
it sounded great for a minute until it burst into flames.
Now the tubes last for like 2 weeks and you're done.
2 weeks, gone.
But yeah, he told me, he's like, that's the problem with it for him was, and that fizzy, you know how like when you put the gain up and it gets real fizzy?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of power tube distortion because they don't bias them hot. They're cold biased. So you don't have to worry about biasing them. You can just change the tubes out and it's easy. And I always wondered, I'm like, my 800, I have to change tubes like every 2 years. The 5150, I could have it for 15 and I never have to change a tube.
Yeah.
It's because it's so cold that it wouldn't matter. He's like, but if you do this, it'll be awesome. Like,
And the Marshall, you have to get biased. I remember the first time I had an 800, and it's like, yeah, you got to get this. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, they're
what
not,
about the tube?
whatever. Yeah.
You can't just put a tube in there?
So that was your amp. That was your next amp. Was that 5150 then?
Yeah. So like I went from a crate to a 5150, and I stuck with a 5150 all the way up until probably after we stopped touring full time. I didn't change to the 800 because I've always wanted one, but I was I was always afraid to take, like, that was another thing about the 5150. Like, I didn't have the money for a head case. You just throw that son of a bitch in the van. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I'm not throwing an 800 nowhere. Like, I need a damn case for this thing.
Yeah.
So after we got like, we were kind of still tiny, like a little bit of touring. I got that, and that's been the amp I've used since. But
Okay.
and now that's what our main amps. Me and Russ both use 800s.
Nice. Do you run anything in front of it?
Oh yeah. So like we met. Well, when I first got the 800, I would run like an old TS9.
Okay.
And then I had an SD1 that had the JRC mod in it, which and was pretty cool, but for it started to get a little weird and whatever. And then I met up with Kevin from Godlike that did Maxon, like they sold Maxon pedals in the US. So okay. He sent me one of the Maxon 808s, and I loved it, but it always sounded really bright to me.
Huh.
And the Marshall's already pretty mid-spiky. So
yeah.
You add like a bright, and like the 808 was to this like original Ibanez specs too. Like their 808 it's awesome. It just always was just bright. And so it's probably a couple of years now, but I befriended a guy named Patrick that does Abominable Electronics.
Oh yeah.
And he does an 808 sort of pedal called the Hellmouth that has a ton of cool little things, and it has like two different like 808 circuits, and there's like added gain if you want it, but I never really need that. But the 808 it's just really smooth, and I can get a lot of low end out of that pedal more than I could get out of the other overdrives I've tried. Because I did an OCD and I thought that would work, but it was like a little too muddy. And Patrick's Hellmouth is it's perfect.
Got it.
Interesting. I have to try. Like my main one is like I keep trying other things, but always go back to the 808. Like
it's great. Is it which 808 are you using?
It's an early 2000s Maxon 808. Yep. Yeah.
That's mine. I think when I talked to Kevin, it was probably like 2005 when I got that 808.
Yeah.
And it sounds like on the Mesa, like if I do the orange channel and push the Mesa, that pedal crushes it. Oh, it
really?
sounds so good.
Oh, wow.
It sounds so good. On my Marshall and it could be because I have it's the 100-watt 2204, and I also have it like set up the Zach Wildway with the 6550 tubes, and it's just really like it's so bright that I can't even use my presence knob. And I know there's a mod to kind of pull some of that back. That could be the main reason why the 808 sounds weird, because the amp's just so bright.
Right. Well, also Marshalls are mid-heavy, high mid-heavy anyways, which is what the Maxon's pushing even more. So depending on how you're dialing in your amp, like it's just too much. Because like I'm always using it with like the EVH heads, and I just use it. Dude, no drive.
I have to try one of those.
All level, and then just a little bit past noon on the tone, so it gives it a little bit of bright and a bunch of heat going in the front, and it just kind of brings everything together. So.
How do you like those EVH heads?
Yeah. I love it, like, because I basically use like, unless like I have a couple. I have like a 50-watt 6L6. 100-watt EL34, and then the lunchbox head. And it's like I basically use the 100-watt EL34 for everything. Like, because you can get from the green channel, the clean channel on that, you can get like the JTM 45, like marginally, like just breakup kind of gain. Blue channel, like, it depending on what tubes because I took it to an amp specialist guy, and he was just like, because there's so many, like, talking about gain stages, like that head, there's 8 preamp tubes in it.
Holy shit.
So I was just
that's incredible.
this is kind of nuts for like, you know, doing things like the street punk band that played, like the Brats is more of a like JMP style type band. So I swapped out one of the 12 or the EC 12AX7, like whichever variant that of the preamp tubes. And
preamp.
so it lowered the second gauge stage for the blue channel, so it's more like an 800.
Okay.
And then I just swapped back in like a regular 12AX7 recently, just because it has more gain and it's fun to. So just like simple things that you can do with that, and like it's basically same head, every project, like. Use it for our Niraj and I have a band Guy Collider. Like I use the red channel for that, and it's it's just basically 3 heads in one.
Man, I mean, I've heard so much good shit about those amps, and I've seen so many people that I like their tone a lot using those amps. So I don't know, that might be a.
I mean, the 50 watt is kind of perfect, like because I mean it's cheap, a lot cheaper than the 100 watt. It's easier to carry around. Like, I mean, the amount of heads, like, unless you need, like, what's it, stadium level headroom.
Yeah. Well, dude, that's like even with my 800, I literally at the highest I've turned it up to 2.
Oh Jesus!
Like you can't go any higher. It's like it's so loud it might kill me.
Yeah.
Like I can't. So I've been looking for a 50 watt amp because I want to be able to push the amp a little bit better.
It's perfect. So. Like, cause it's funny. I actually the 100 watt head. I set it up as backline for Discharge when they were opening for the Misfits at the Forum.
Okay.
And so he was playing through my rig. And I'm like, oh, cool, we're in an arena, so like let's crank this thing, and like got it up to like 4, and he was just like, God damn, like turn that, like just like standing off to the side, like Bones is just like, man, this is too freaking. I'm like where do you use 100 watt head? I'm like, this is in an arena, like this is what this is supposed to be used for. And it's too loud.
Wow. That's like, and it's weird because you think like, well, all those amp companies that are doing like the little 20 watt versions of their amps, like I'm sure if you're like not going to have a PA, that's going to not be too great. But man, like if you have a PA, why does it like that's probably fine and you'll push.
Like if you have a PA, like the lunchbox, and I used that at Riot Fest. Like we had a full PA, and it was just like, and it's carry on. So like, I mean, my whole backline was in a roller bag. And
that's amazing.
Like it's great. Like in like a practice situation, not great, because like especially if you have a drummer that hits hard, like you can't hear it. But if you have monitors and like you're in an actual venue or whatever, it's great.
I've been on a quest with those small amps because I'm sick of carrying gear, and it has all failed because what they're doing is all these small amps are like, oh yeah, you can push like 45 watts or whatever, but at 4 ohms. Who the fuck has a 4 ohm cabinet?
Yeah, that's it, dude. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I was like, so then I'm getting 12 watts or 15 watts out of this, and there's no way gonna push it as hard as like a drum, playing a drum with a drummer that hits hard,
Yep.
I was like, fuck this.
Yeah. That's it. Well, now I know, so I'm not even gonna waste my time on that.
Yeah, they're all like 10 watts below what you need.
Like, right,
for the every situation amp, and I'm sure that's by design too. Like probably engineers have gone in and like mic'd up like with a decibel meter, like how loud is the drummer? Okay, the head's gonna go to this loud.
And then make them buy the 100 watts.
Exactly. So Scott, if you're like going on like the road or like all throughout your experiences in your career and stuff, what's the like one piece of gear that you would be like, I have to have this piece. This is something that I have to travel with or I have to have with me at all times. It could be a guitar, it could be pedals, it could be whatever.
Honestly, probably like the ESPs I use. Like
Oh, really?
like
Okay.
they're the most comfortable guitar. I even like as much as I love Gibsons and all that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff. Like I just never feel comfortable on stage with anything but the ESPs. Like I've used them for so long, and I
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
like
yeah.
I've a kinship with them. I
Yeah.
do, however, really love some Jackson, but
I saw that.
dude, that since I was a kid, you can't beat that headstock logo. No one will ever beat the Jackson headstock. Never. Some have tried, and they
Oh
won't.
yeah.
It's the best.
Even ESP had that headstock
They
for a
did,
while
yeah.
until
They
there
did
was
the-
a
Yeah, they did.
lawsuit.
Yeah.
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 Until headstock wars came about in the late '80s, because
Because
it was
early
Gibson
Metallica
suing.
ESP, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Gibson
yeah,
sued
yeah.
ESP, Gibson sued Ibanez. It was just like established the headstock is the trademark, and then like Fender started
Wow.
suing like Charvel.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
so Fender owns Jackson and Charvel now, right?
now they
Okay.
have said that because what's hilarious though is like the scroll headstock is a ripoff of, I believe, his Bigsby guitars. Like when
Oh,
Bigsby was
wow.
actually making guitars, they basically ripped off the head, like the scroll tipped headstock was like a
Wow.
Bigsby guitar. So it's
That's
like, and now they're going out and suing people.
yeah, of course. So dumb. But yeah, the
But-
ESP having that, it's like I feel right when I'm on stage with them.
So what's your favorite? Is it all the EC guitars or?
Yep. Yeah, like I have a few. I have the one, the EC, what do they call them? Standard series Eclipse. Like before, now that like they don't
Like before
ESP,
E2, yeah.
Yeah, like so I have two of the ESP Eclipses, the Japanese standard series. I have this awesome, like sort of like cherry burst kind of, but it was like they did a little worn stuff on this version or whatever. It's kind of beat up. And then the other one's a silver burst, because I always wanted a silver burst. And the Eclipse like that, they got really close to what the customs look like. I was pretty happy about it.
I'm looking for right now. Yeah, I'm looking for Japanese, old Japanese Les Pauls, like the lawsuit ones.
Oh yeah.
And seeing if I can find a silver burst in one of those, because
that's, I mean, dude, those guitars, all the Japanese guitars I've
they
played
play
are
great.
just perfect. They're so nice. And that's like the one I mainly use now. It is the E2 EC, whatever. It's the vintage black, and then I have Fishman's in it. The Willie Adler series Fishman's. So, but those guitars, man, I just love them.
That's killer. So what do you have coming? You've got ZAO's getting ready to go out on tour.
Yeah.
So-
We are, last year we put a record out, and when everything kind of fell apart and you weren't able to do anything, we were like, we had the record ready then.
What happened?
it was
So
like some sort of like pandemic or something. I heard.
Something,
Pandemic?
yeah.
Panera? Panera
Panera
bread?
bread. we had the record ready right then, and then everything kind of fell apart. So we held back the record, but then it felt like everybody did that because everybody was nervous. And then last year, even though restrictions were still in place and there weren't a lot of shows, we were just like, we don't want to sit on it anymore. So we released the record last year, but we released it like right in summer, and then things sort of started slowly opening up in late summer, fall.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that Furnace Fest last year. We had some of our own shows around Furnace Fest, but this year we are, for the first time in a long time, doing a support run with Darkest Hour, which is super exciting.
Nice.
And then we are doing that Blue Ridge. It's super weird, man. Like, I don't even know how to.
What is that? I see it everywhere, and I'm just like,
okay. So
like every band I follow is now on that festival.
it's literally
Like in West
it
Virginia or
doesn't-
something like that?
It's in Virginia. It's in Virginia.
Okay.
It's like it's some like raceway, right? And it shouldn't work. It shouldn't work because it's this big rock festival, and they have like Seether and shit like this, like
Oh, shit,
like
okay.
legitimately like arena bands.
Yeah.
Oh, I just saw that Gojira like announced that they're doing it too. I was like, holy,
Whoa,
okay.
that's like huge.
So that's yeah, there's that. So they have all these huge, like everything you would think that would be like, I don't even know how to, like Slipknot size bands, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think Lamb of God's playing it, like all that kind of stuff. They have that. And then there's a ton of like us, and like I think Darkest Hour's doing it. I didn't realize
Darkest
they were
Hour's
doing
doing it. Like God Forbid's playing.
God
it.
Forbid's playing. Shadows Fall, I think, is doing it.
Wow.
So a ton, and not like, I mean, ZAO's not on that level, but you know, bands that are like sort of in that peer range.
Yeah.
So it's really strange to me that like they're able to pull that off, because it's going to be like, it's going to be awkward. For a band like us, I'm always like slightly intimidated to like try to play in front of a crowd that like is going to see Seether. Like, how's that going to work?
Yeah.
Like, are they really going to be like, oh, great, this sounds like vomit and super heavy? Like, how? But maybe, I don't know. Like,
I don't know,
Meshuggah
just-
plays stuff like that,
yeah.
and like,
Go out there and
just
give
do
them the
it. I'm
Scott
just gonna
magic.
go.
Just
Yeah,
give
we're just gonna
some-
give
just
it.
some melon bro attitude.
That's it.
Shove an EC in their face and just be like, "This is it. This is what
Get
you
a Marble
wanted to
Mouth
hear."
singer for that show. That's it. You're right.
Yeah, I get like, yeah, Marble Mouth guy. I think Dan could pull that off a little bit.
I totally
yeah.
get what you're saying. Like, it's like, because I remember just like playing, like, even to a much lesser extent, just like going out on a metal tour for the first time, like stepping
Yeah,
out
like
like a hardcore scene, like that was eye opening. Like,
Well, and the one, like you're talking, like we did an In Flames tour, and we started out on that tour. I was like, this is going to fucking be miserable. Everybody's going to hate us every night. It was great. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe how well we were received on a tour like that, because it was like we opened it, Devil Driver, Trivium, and then In Flames. I was like, there's no way people are going to like us, and it ended up being awesome.
I feel like it
Oh.
depends on the bands too. Like,
I
In
think-
Flames definitely had the crossover. Like,
Yep.
when we did a Lamb of God 6 Feet Under tour, and it
Oh,
was
wow.
like all of like the Chris Barnes, like Cannibal Corpse dudes, and like all the Deicide shirts showing up, which I love Deicide, but
Absolutely.
they don't like any band that doesn't have long hair and, you know, have a upside down cross burned in their forehead. So it was just like some of the commentary, I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was not like you get the hardcore crowd that would come out to see us, and then you would have the metal crowd coming out to see Chris Barnes. And sometimes it was cool, but there was definitely like the, I don't know what kind of crowd this is tonight.
Oh, that's dude. It's like it. I mean, everybody, you got to go out and just do what you're gonna do. But like, you know, the hidden intimidations that people don't realize you have as a performer, man. Yeah, it can be kind of intense.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that is perceived versus like reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was it like when you did the tours with? Because you went out with Prong a couple
Yeah.
times, right, Fred? How was that?
Like that.
I love Prong, by the way. That's fucking sick. But
I mean, that was surreal because it was just like, I mean, this is a band that I watched on MTV, and then
I
like
know.
I'm stepping out on stage and I'm singing these songs. I'm like, what? Like, this is nuts. Like, I mean, it was great. Like, I mean, you know, it was surreal and it was great. You know, and it was definitely like just being in the context of that. It's kind of like, I feel like if it was, and I think music's changed a lot too. So like, you know, and people have gotten older and less people have hair. So
Well, dude, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I'm losing mine, man. I'm not playing in front of freaking 6 feet under people. Then if they want long hair, we're screwed.
Like everybody's chill with the bald dude
Yeah.
and headbanging. They're like, oh, you're doing it. It's great.
So you got to go to the black metal scene. The black metal dude, there's a lot of bald dudes in the black metal scene.
Yeah.
That's right.
Love some baldies.
Questionable why their heads are shaved, but that's a whole nother story.
It depends on what the band's name is. If it's
Yes,
Burzum, then you might have some.
Then you might have a
Issues.
problem.
might be something there. Oh man.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thanks.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for coming
Yeah.
on. It's been a blast chatting.
Dude, this is.
Like,
I know.
Appreciate it.
have an excuse just to hang out for an hour.
That's what podcasts really are. I wish people would just be more
That's
honest
true.
about that. They're
Yeah.
really just to hang out with your friends, like people that you don't get to see. That's what I love about these things. It's so great.
I mean, to be honest, I'm doing it for that podcast money.
Oh yeah, it's
You know,
it's, I mean,
it's rolling in.
how
you know?
close to Rogan are you?
Oh yeah, we're
That's Spotify money.
knocking on his neighbor's door like a couple counties over.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, yeah. Well, I hope. Are you guys coming out to the West Coast anytime soon, or
we
Vault yet? Or
I think we're gonna try to do it just like on our own. But I know Darkest Hour, that portion of the tour we weren't on, but I think they're coming out right before that East Coast run, and we couldn't work out getting out there with them. So we're hoping to get out there on our own. Yeah, because so Fred, I know you're in like a Los Angeles area, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in Los Angeles too.
Naraj
So
is
both of you
about
guys. Okay,
30
awesome.
feet that way.
I live.
Oh, that's
I'm
incredible.
I live in his back house, basically. Like his wife and him. Yeah, I live in the back house.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, then if we get out there, then I have to
Definitely.
see both of you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
That'd
gotta
be
hang
so
for
amazing.
sure. Yeah, we'll totally come out. Yeah, it'd be great.
Ah,
Yeah.
I love it.
Let's
Man, well,
we'll
thank
come
you
to
guys
this
for
show.
having me on.
Yeah, man. Take care.
All right, Scott.
All right. We'll see you guys.
All
Take
right.
care.